landowners and farmers for soil conservation work. Saluda Lake supplies drinking water to the greater Easley area and serves over 100,000 customers. Sediment is a significant problem in the lake and in the streams and rivers upstream in the watershed. Water quality is impaired, aquatic habitat is degraded, and recreational use is impacted due to excess sedimentation. Between 2011 and 2012, approximately 366,000 cubic yards of sediment were dredged from the upper lake by ECU at a cost of over $7 million. Since then, the upper lake has filled in with sediment once again, back to the same level, and the estimated cost to dredge again this time exceeds $10 million, and there's simply nowhere to put it. Much of this sediment is coming from in-channel erosion due to erosive storm flows and insufficient erosion sediment control and insufficient riparian buffer protection. Riparian buffer protection and protection of other sensitive environmental areas are important tools for developing watershed resiliency and to protect downstream water quality and are critical and precious drinking water sources and to help mitigate the negative impacts of development. What's a riparian buffer? Riparian buffers are vegetated areas next to streams, rivers, lakes, wetlands, and other waters that help protect them from the impacts of adjacent land uses. A healthy and effective riparian buffer is sufficiently wide and contains a combination of native trees, shrubs, and other perennial plants. Riparian buffers are important not only for large rivers, but also for small streams, wetlands, lakes, ponds, springs, etc. And they provide many benefits, including water quality protection, stream bank stabilization, prevention of loss of land. This is a big one. We are spending 6 figures to try to put streams back together on very small sections of streams, where this could have been prevented from better land use protections upstream. Prevention of downstream sedimentation due to erosion, as I mentioned, the lake, filtration of pollutants from stormwater runoff, floodwater storage, groundwater infiltration. The benefits go on. DHEC requires riparian buffer protection during construction. We're talking about a post-construction water quality buffer. Lots of other cities and counties have these buffer protections, and I've been working closely with them. I'd be glad to provide y'all some other recommendations, this and some other, I really wanted to emphasize the buffers, but I'm glad to provide Megan some written recommendations.
Thank you.
And any other information that I can provide. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of council, this concludes the public forum.
Thank you, ma'am. That takes us to item 3 on tonight's agenda, which is approval of minutes. I'll ask for a motion approving the minutes for the December 5th, 2022 regular council meeting and the January 3rd organizational meeting. Do I have a motion and a second? Motion. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second by Councilman Lawless. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Councilman Wilson, I guess, is abstaining. Item number 4 on tonight's agenda is the administrator's report. Mr. Roper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. I appreciate this opportunity to update you on a couple of things going on with county council staff. The first is to review. You remember a couple of Saturdays back, council spent some time in a work session. And in that work session, you talked about goals for the coming year. I left those notes that you took, kind of the synthesis notes from that meeting. I left those on the wall and invited county staff to come by. We've been about the business in the last couple of weeks, as you instructed, trying to figure out a way to find common themes and threads in those goals for the year, so we can put that in a manageable package that we can use to motivate staff, to keep staff on point, make sure the staff is doing the things that county council sees as its vision for the coming year. And I want to let you know we're making progress on that. We're actually pretty excited about it, and some of our staff members are very excited about it. Basically, we're coalescing around 3 council goals, which I'll send this out to you tomorrow in a way that you can look at it more maintain momentum with our Fixing County Roads program, adapt to conditions and maximize our solid waste capacity, mentioned just tonight, support availability of adequate and affordable housing, analyze infrastructure challenges as growth continues. But not just a plan, not just a purpose, but you also identified the need for us to attract and support passionate people, recruit and hire excellent employees to best serve our citizens, retain and support current and future employees, cultivate economic development capacity as well as strengthen our small businesses, sustain our culture of public service, enhance quality of life for the Pickens County citizens, education, and recreation life. It's our intention to take these broad strokes and come back to you with specific recommendations under each, with specific metrics by which we would measure how we succeed on this, and also how we will communicate to the public and to our citizens the way that we are accomplishing these goals. So a little bit more information from on that. Basically, the three, as we said, we were able to feedback to your goals. We're just trying to synthesize them from a staff standpoint. Nurture a resilient community, proactively address local challenges, attract and support action. I'm a big fan of these circle graphs. I'll laugh at me about the plan, a purpose, and our people, and the way they relate to each other. So look for us to bring specific proposals under these with specific metrics in the coming weeks. Tonight, a couple of people in the public mentioned litter, and it is an issue that we are obviously dealing with. I had the opportunity to travel to Rock Hill here a couple of weeks ago, and most recently this week I had the opportunity to travel to Atlanta. And in that, both instances, I took Highway 11. And I took some photos and started to bring them tonight and decided, no, photos of other people's garbage doesn't really address our problem. But I did notice in Oconee, Greenville, Spartanburg, Cherokee, same or worse conditions. Litter is everywhere, particularly on the city highways, particularly golf, and our neighborhoods is also golf. So I want to give you a little update on that. Our litter enforcement officers in 2022 issued 111 citations for littering. They removed 232 non-compliant signs, distributed 24 tarps to folks with uncovered loads, so with full loads, uncovered loads, we provide them with 3 tarps to try to help and educate. Total fines collected through our enforcement efforts were 10,122. What you're not able to see is the education component of what they're doing, because that's not as exciting. There's not metrics for that we can do as easily. But I want to tell you the story of one case. That would be the Pickens County versus Floyd Arnold Kemp. Floyd Arnold Kemp drove for a company that sweeps parking lots. This is a parking lot sweeping machine. Basically, it sweeps parking lots at Lowe's, Home Depot, inmates out working on the road. That's a good thing, it's a good sign, it's good for all of us, it's good for the conditions in our community. That's what you castle so wisely said. The inmates are not the answer, they're just dealing with problems. So we've got to continue our education efforts. Thank you for what you've done so far, we're making progress. Members of council, any questions about my mentions?
Anything from Mr. Roper?
Chairman, I have some
Mr.
questions.
Sada.
On December 5th, the council approved changing the name of the county jail to the C. David Stone Pickens County Law Enforcement Center. When will that sign be put up and that building dedicated?
We do not have a date at this time. I can tell you based on some feedback from you all, I inquired with the sheriff's office. Building maintenance budget check to make sure you're on track for that. We'll update you since we have it.
Okay. As everybody knows here, most people know that the county owns the Haygood Mill, but leases it to the Haygood Mill Foundation. So I have 3 questions. The first one is the foundation received, or was pledged $100,000 by the state to put doors on the pavilion. Now, the Haygood Mill Foundation has asked us to donate money as well. Has the foundation determined what the cost of the doors are going to be? If so, what's the status of getting the price and a contractor for those doors? Do you know?
I don't know the cost, and the reason I don't know the cost is because we do not have submitted to the county yet the architectural drawings for those doors.
Okay, so the Haygood Mill Foundation has to give you the drawings in order for you to put it out for bid?
Latest news we have is that they have those drawings. They just haven't been supplied to us yet. This was as of Friday. But we have offered to help facilitate this. We're going to handle the bidding and the project management for this to try to get it done.
Okay. So weeks, months, or goes out to bids?
If it goes out to bid, you'll be talking months, but single-digit, small number months.
Okay, good. In August 2021, the county gave the foundation $25,000 to build 10 glamping sites. Now, it's the start of 2023.
Right.
Are those sites been built? What's the status of those sites?
They've been partially constructed. I had our staff go down and meet with the Haygood Mill folks who are operating the facility just a couple of weeks back to check on that. They have some permitting work they still need to do. So we're going to assist them in every way we can with that, but they have not been completed.
Okay. One final thing, too. I got some questions about the cotton gin. Who owns the cotton gin at the Haygood Mill?
So the cotton gin at the Haygood Mill, we can't locate on our side any records of why or who donated it, and did they donate it to the foundation or did they donate it to the county? But we did follow up and have been assured that the gin is still in the Haygood Mill Foundation's possession. It has not been sold, it is just in storage. We're going to continue to try to resolve that issue.
Okay, one final thing is, I asked for a tour a month or 2 ago for a few departments. One was the vehicle maintenance, public works, roads and bridges, and building maintenance. Can we schedule that in the next
Sure,
few weeks?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman.
Mr. Stansel, thank you for bringing that up in public forum. I had a question about that. He was talking about the hours, and that's something that we looked at when we kept changing them around to try to please everybody. The problem we ran into was that we didn't have the money to be able to pay all the people to fix the hours. However, he brings up a really good point on the Saturday morning stuff, because I get calls about that, mostly from family members, but I get calls about that same sort of thing. I can't do it now, I'm working during the week. And is that something that you guys can look into and maybe report back to us on?
Yes, sir, Mr. Vice Chairman. I made a note about that to look at that. It's the perfect time for that sort of information because we're heading into the budget season. That would be the big determinative factor is do we have the budget or can we raise the budget through fees or whatever to somehow provide those additional hours. So it's a perfectly appropriate time for that kind of question, and we will look into it and have you an answer.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Roper?
I have a question.
Dr. Wilson.
So, Mr. Roper, I apologize for being on the spot. It has been quite a while. But if you could, please, kind of review for the board and for the community the permit development process we went through for using alcohol and the reason why we did that wasn't a new policy initiative or agenda by the board. It was to clarify some things. for the community? Could you please?
Right, so what you're addressing there is the Sunday alcohol sales.
No, the permit request to be able to have events that use alcohol on our county properties.
We do have a permitting process where individual events during limited hours at a limited location, they can apply to the county to allow the serving of alcohol at a county facility. It is not any time of the day, every day, that sort of thing. It's just not, that's still not allowed. It has to be an individual permitted event. It has to have a vendor who has an alcohol license already. It has to be an event that would be appropriate for that kind of beverage service. So we're not serving beer at softball games. That's not what this is. The only time that I'm aware that it's actually happened, I think it's happened twice that these have been permitted. One was at the Haygood Mill, and I don't remember the nature of that event, but it was specific for that. It was sort of in an enclosed area. They had one of their events. And the other was for an art show at the Dacusville Community Center, where the artist and the people that put on the show wanted to have a wine reception. And so they had a wine reception for it. Those are the only two that I'm aware of that have happened.
And the genesis for this, because we didn't have to have 3 readings because we didn't do a new ordinance or anything like that. The genesis was you were having requests and you guys were saying no patently, but there was some legal concern with that. Can you remind me, please?
You're correct about that. I don't remember the blow-by-blow of how that all came about, but I do remember that we were getting repeated requests from folks to handle for us to permit little events like that, and it came to county council and asked about that. But this wasn't. It wasn't opening county facilities up to alcohol all day, every day, or even regularly. It's for individual, discrete, permitted events.
And if you could please, I feel kind of like Perry Mason here. I'm sorry, but if you don't mind, there's an element of it where the sheriff has to sign off that the event will, sort of passes muster from a safety and manageability.
There's three really kind of procedural hurdles in addition to the county giving the permit, which is discretionary. We don't have to give a permit to somebody if we think the event's not appropriate. But the others are, there has to be a sled check on the business to make sure they're in good standing, and that's something that the sheriff assists us with. There also has to be insurance on the event to make sure that they're covered in case of any kind of liability. And it has to be served by a ABC licensed vendor. This can't be just a bunch of people bring kegs to, a county facility and have a party. So there's several kind of procedural steps there as well to protect and to make sure these are just individual events, not the main. 99.9% of the offerings at all of our county facilities are absolutely alcohol-free.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Roker? Hearing none, we'll move to item 5 on tonight's agenda. Item 5 is the committee report. We had a council work session Saturday, January the 14th. There was a motion out of executive session for staff to work on the administrator's contract. This item is on the agenda this evening to be discussed in executive session. Next up is the committee of the whole meeting that was held on Tuesday, January the 17th. Vice Chairman Costner made a motion for a 6-month moratorium with an option to be extended out 90 days to be moved out of committee and for staff to provide recommendations on the development size. Motion was seconded by Henry Wilson and carried unanimously 6-0. This motion comes as a recommendation from the committee, so no second is required. Any discussion?
Question.
Yes, sir.
Before we vote on it, do we vote on the moratorium, but we don't have the details of it? Do we need that before we actually vote?
I believe our attorney here has some information.
Mr. Chairman, after the committee meeting, I went ahead and wrote a moratorium pursuant to the discussion that was in the committee of the whole, and I've got it here for your perusal. One of the, I've got a copy here about it. One of the things about moratorium is that you must comply with some limitations. Council requirement follows limitations. And one of those limitations is that it has to be temporal. So you have to have a certain time, it has to be fixed. In this moratorium motion was that it be 6 months, with the possibility of extending it for another 30 days. Case law says that that's appropriate, and that passes muster under a fixed temporal time. 90 days. 3 months, yes. In addition to that, Mr. Chairman, there has to be a nexus with what council is doing. And you also passed a motion to review the UDSO for changes that it might need. Part of the resolutions here, whereas clauses here, speak to the growth that the county is having, and our UDSO needs revision to regulate that growth in an appropriate manner for the present and the future. The other issue, which I put a number in here, and I certainly the council needs to discuss this, is the size of the subdivision, basically, that you're passing a moratorium on. I put in here anything greater than 99 homes. I'll tell you where that came from. Council spoke to major subdivisions that were disruptive of traffic and requiring significant infrastructure uses. 99 homes is the standard that the Department of Transportation uses when they require a significant traffic study to be done. So that seemed appropriate with what council's wishes were, but that number is in here is 99 homes. That's certainly nothing that was said at the committee poll, but you asked for staff recommendations, and that's where that comes from. It also excludes anything that's already been passed or permitted. If you permitted somebody to start a subdivision and they're working on it, and you pass a moratorium so you can't do it anymore, I would be in court and would not like the outcome of that city. So we exclude anything that's already passed. We've also noted the pending ordinance doctrine. Pending ordinance doctrine means that this moratorium starts today. So while you have 3 readings of this ordinance, the moratorium actually starts today. So it reverts back to today, should council pass it. And I'll be glad to answer any other questions.
So this does meet the spirit and the legalities behind, so the spirit of what council's wishes were in the committee meeting, and then legally it is a sound document, meets all the requirements. Discussions on this moratorium.
I have a question.
Dr. Wilson.
So the planning staff had recommended we start at 10, and the implication being that 10 and under is highly unlikely to have sustained impact on traffic or utilities and other infrastructure. The gap between the 10 and the 100 feels to me, if all things were perfect, an area where the Planning Commission would be an ideal entity to hear the proposals for the neighborhoods and determine whether or not there's a significant long-term strategic impact associated with traffic and whatnot, and to determine whether or not up to 100 they could go forward. That feels to me like the natural place for whether or not the moratorium would apply. Is there room for that? Is there a way that we could do that? Is there an effective way to do it? I mean, you're basically asking folks to come in and pre-pitch their permitting and to get an assessment from the planning folks. To do something like that, our UDSO would have to cover it, right? So is there terminology in there that would make that less vague and maybe more specific than the way that I've just described it?
Yes. As I understand your question, you want to know if we could change the moratorium so that it said any homes, any subdivisions that people apply for between 10 and 100 homes would be subject to approval of the Planning Commission. We would need to have criteria that the Planning Commission would be given to make a determination. If you have a set number, then that's very clear to staff and the Planning Commission that if it's less than 100 homes, the moratorium doesn't affect it. If it's 100 homes or over, it's affected. It's certainly prohibited by the moratorium. So council will need to be very careful on the direction that they gave the Planning Commission on homes, on subdivisions that have homes between 10 100. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. My suggestion is if the council wants to go down that road, then you have two readings to amend what's here. This is clear, okay? So 100 homes or above is moratorium. If you want to add additional language, I think that would take some a thought process on how to write it. Could be written. I wouldn't want to give you language tonight.
So the document you guys give us that sort of did a heat map of the development, the two numbers that stood out on that map to me were 18 near the lakes. So, ostensibly a relatively larger house type, development around the lakes for high dollar. And then 48 was the next number that stands out for me. So, and then after that it was, 75 plus, all the way up to 2,500. I guess the question for me is, if it would be untenable to let the Planning Commission determine, then can we find some compromise between 100 and 10, based on that heat map, like 48, somewhere around there. My concern is if you get too small, you cut out all growth and opportunity for carpenters to make a living in the county and people to do things on their own property. But there's a point there where the development intensity is of a scale where it's likely to be, highest bidder from the region that comes in here with crews to do the work for, a D.R. Horton or somebody like that. That's the scale and intensity of development that we seem to be wanting to do something about. So to me, the question is 100 right?
So I have a question then. So, I mean, I get exactly what you're saying, but are there not already safeguards that are in place for any development? I mean, I get it. We're working to fix this. And I'm looking at the heat map now that, all the development's happening down here, and we're all worried about up here where there's nothing happening.
Right.
Is it a geography thing that you do, or is it there you could look at that aspect of it too. I mean, I can be persuaded to change the number, but I mean, it's like we're an arbitrary number that we're pulling out of the hat. I at least like the fact that he said that's based on the, who?
DOT.
DOT. Yeah, I got DHEC in my head right now for some reason, but the DOT. That's based on their guidelines. But I'd also don't want to create this unintended consequence of somebody jumping in and going, okay, let's do a bunch of them at this size,
Yeah, just do a smaller section of something that's going to be the seed for a larger development.
A phase.
Right, yeah, phase 1 of 73.
That was gonna be my question.
So then maybe that's the language we need to look at putting in there. If it's if we're talking about a phased in, that would be a red flag for the Planning Commission.
I think it'd be great if we could just make this entire headache the Planning Commission's responsibility to police for us, right?
Is it in form of a
These guys are
motion?
voted for it.
Unfortunately, that's not it. To your point, I do agree. We did discuss major, minor, and all those things, and if you get down the definition that DOT recognizes, so the legalistic side of it all supports the argument for the 99 number. The heat map and the practicality of it, you're right, that 48, 50, whatever you want to call it, is an argument, but the legalistic side and the common sense side don't always match up.
So there's grounds, is what you're saying.
Yeah. There's a precedent set for the definition with the DOT. Other conversation, discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Sato.
I'm going to make an amendment to this Section 2 moratorium imposed, Section A. So it's 2A. It's going to be subdivision which is in excess of 49 housing units. That's my amendment.
So I have a motion for amendment for Section 2A. And Councilman Sato, make sure I get this correct, changing 99 to 49. So the motion, and that's the only change in Section 2A, is that correct?
That's true.
So changing 99 to 49. I have a motion for that amendment. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second by
Ms. Linville.
Ms. Linville. Thank you.
there's two primary issues here. One issue is the amount of houses that get built, and the other issue is how close they're together. We really can't change how close they are together that quickly. But this will solve at least one of the problems while we think about this.
Any discussion on that?
I have a question. This might be procedural. So you said if we pass this, it starts today, even though it does take 3 readings. What happens if during those 3 readings the number of housing units gets changed? Wouldn't that have?
That's permissible. The ordinance can be changed. It just relates back to today. So at what you pass today, this next week, it will be less than this moratorium. If you lessen the number or increase the number at the end of that, when you do that, that's what it will be.
Okay, so if I'm a developer and I come in, this passes tonight with 99 houses, I come in with 75 houses and get permitted, but then next month in our second reading, we change it back to 99, that person got through.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thanks.
Other discussion?
I just want some clarification.
Councilman Lawless.
So our 99 number is a already DOT has done 99, correct?
Well, the Department of Transportation uses above 99 when they require a significant traffic study because they evidently the thought process would be that when you get to that side of the subdivision, it changes the traffic.
Yes.
Sense. And so that's the number they use, and that's why I tied it into that. Legally, you can use the other numbers. That's fine. I think you're fine as long as you're consistent, whether it's 49 or 10.
So 99 is not like a legal precedence. If we go with less than that, somebody can't come and say, well, you can't make your own number. This is the standard.
That's correct.
Okay.
Other discussion? Vice Chairman.
The only thing I was going to say is that, I think it's, whatever the number is the number. If somebody's going to be a bad actor and take advantage of it, if it's 49, then they can start with 40 and do the same thing you're talking about. Or they could start with 10 and do the same thing you're talking about. I think our intent on this is to try to just put a pause on these big developments so that we can study this and make sure we've got everything in place. I'm not sold on the 99 or the 49. I just think that if somebody's going to try to work the way around it, how do you protect that if somebody's, that's why that's why I thought, are there already things in place, or is it the Wild Wild West?
Dr. Wilson.
So the last time I lived in anything multifamily was a barracks in the Navy, right? When people were way too close. Now it's a quarter mile to my nearest neighbor. So I don't have a range of for me, living in a tight neighborhood would be very difficult. I'm listening to feedback from folks that feel like 50 is a huge neighborhood, which I tend to agree with. To me, the long-term sustained impact of a new neighborhood is 50 to 100 years. For sure, right? So for the next 6 months, where's the cutoff line? 50 seems like a pretty good sized neighborhood. And if you do $500,000, that's per house. It's a fairly sustained investment in the community.
Chairman?
Councilwoman Linville.
I would vote to support a smaller number than 99. I respect what DOT does for traffic, but as we've identified, Pickens County is more rural, and some of our roads dumping 4 people in a home, that's an impact on a road that might be larger to us than some other places in the state. Also, listening to the feedback we had from the watershed expert, right now we have a requirement of ½ acre of a lot at minimum, ½ acre to 1 acre. You're looking now at a 50 to 100 acre development. That can do significant damage to water and trees, and that's part of what we're working on. So I would support going smaller for now, because what we were responding to, a lot of damage can be done with 99 housing units on 1 acre lots each, can make a big effect for some of the stuff that we have identified as wanting to change. So I would support a smaller number.
Other discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Seda.
when you have water and sewer, you can put houses on a 5,000 square feet.
Right.
right? So that's the problem. It's not, I don't know, it's not an acre and a half. It's
Depends on where they go in the county.
Yeah, it depends what your water and sewer is. So, I think 50, I mean, I own a house in Cherish Ridge, and those houses are pretty close, but they could have been closer under the DSO, I mean, and there's cars all over people's lawns and things like that. It's pretty rough. Those houses are way too close. I don't think any subdivision should be built that way, and I would think most people would agree. So, I mean, that's why trying to keep the number lower, so that you don't, if it does happen to sneak through in the next 6 months, it won't be that, it won't be 2,000 houses, just be 50, 49.
Other discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, the motion on the table is to amend section 2A from 99 to 49 homes. I have a motion and a second on the amendment. We had discussion. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by raising your hand. That is unanimous. So back to the original motion on the table, which would be the moratorium as presented with the amendment. Any discussion on that?
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chairman.
does this need to go back to the committee of the whole for us to
That's
talk
actually
about?
next on the committee log.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
For us to put this one back in?
Let's make sure. No, no, you're right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, make that amendment.
Just to amend this moratorium to go back to the committee of the whole, just so that we can get updates and so that we're not at the last hour figuring out what we're doing.
So I have a motion on the table to add an amendment to have this be recommitted, the moratorium recommitted following this reading tonight. That's the motion. Do I have a second on that motion? Councilman Seda, do I have any discussion on that amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by raising your hand. And that is unanimous. So back to the original motion as amended twice. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, next up on the committee log was I made a motion for the first reading in title only to amend the UDSO and return to committee for further discussion. Motion was seconded by Vice Chairman Costner and carried unanimously. This motion comes as a recommendation from the committee, so no seconds required. Any discussion on first reading in title only of the amended UDSO?
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman.
I just think it's important that we, I think we all realize this, but we kind of let everybody know that the reason we're doing this first reading in title only is just so that people know we're going to work on this. And, come hell or high water, we're going to get to where we need to get to, but we got to start the process, and first reading in title only basically means we're starting. So that's why we don't have the details on anything yet.
Absolutely. Other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Seda.
One of the things I would recommend is many different areas in the DSO are not related to each other. Like RV parks is not really related to the lot size for subdivisions. Certain things are going to get done very quickly. And I would pass them as quick as they're done. And that may require 3 separate readings to do that, but I would do that. I would try to get that stuff as fast as possible. Because there's some things we could do very quickly. There's some things that, frankly, we're probably not going to do in 9 months, or it's going to take 9 months. So I would just recommend to the leadership to keep that in mind as things come up, that maybe we can just fast track them and get them done.
One clarification.
No, Dr. Wilson.
Question from Mr. Sada. You're asking the staff to give us sort of a prioritized list of the areas that have the most impact on the moratorium that we just did?
No, because what happened was, I think what they said last time was Todd said, we've got something for the RV parks and for, was it tiny homes? We have that, that would be like right up, real quick. Now, why should we wait another 6 months if that's already done? Let's just get that passed. And honestly, some of the things I just may not vote for because I don't want tiny home communities all over the county. So, I'd like things to be separate where I may like something else and not like that. So the more we break this into pieces, that's what I'm thinking, because some of the stuff will be done quickly, some of it won't. Some of it, may make sense, some of it may not to everybody. If you have it as one big package, it's gonna be like, oof, be a tough vote.
Vice Chairman.
Mr. Sade, I think you're right, in the sense that when we're in the committee, any of us can make a motion and a recommendation to start the reading of something. So as we have those conversations in the committee of the whole, we can start peeling away at the onion and doing those things that are, or I'll use another term, the low-hanging fruit that we can do. But that would be a function of making the motions to the committee.
By the same token, it takes 3 readings to amend any ordinance, and either way, you have to start the process of those readings, which is the spirit of the first reading tonight. Dr. Wilson.
Just to make sure I understand, some of the things that Ms. Linville was discussing about overlays in different areas, there's such a sustained infrastructure discussion associated with those. Those are the kind of things that would take us, I mean, at a minimum, the majority of the 9 months, just to get right. So we accept from that process for the long-term strategic piece, other elements of it, and push them through so they can get out there and start having an impact. That's what we're talking about here. Okay, I think folks would like to see that.
And another point, and there's no secret to it, we just voted on a moratorium, and that's a first reading, and it'll take 3 readings for that. Part of the spirit of that moratorium is we are legitimately working on this document. That's stated in there. It's talking about development in the county. This is a measure that goes with the moratorium measure. It is stating that we are working on this. We do want to see this through. It's not something we're going to drag our feet on. We're taking it seriously. I think it's important to note that as well. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hands. That's unanimous. Thank you so very much. I had nothing from the council work session on Wednesday, February 1st. Item 6 on tonight's agenda is going to be council correspondence. Non-essential county offices will be closed on Monday, February 20th in observance of the President's Day holiday. The committee of the whole meeting will be Tuesday, February 21st at 6 o'clock in the main conference room of the admin building. The next council meeting will be held on Monday, March 6th at 6:30 here in council chambers. Are there any other correspondence that need to be announced tonight? Hearing none. Motion period, new business. We're now at our time for motions or new business. Is there any motions or new business to be added at this time? Hearing none. We've already covered item 8 tonight. Item 9 would be ordinances for second reading, which we have none. Item 10 would be ordinance for third reading, which we have none. Item number 11 would be other request agenda items. At this time, I'm going to recognize President John Lummis from Upstate Alliance. If you don't mind, please, sir. I almost gave you an honorary doctorate there. I apologize.
Wow, I'll take one. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Thank you so much for allowing me to come before you this evening and talk a little bit about our organization and what's been going on in the last year. I know we have 2 new members of council here, so I wanted to go through and do a little bit of an overview of our organization. But first, let me introduce myself. Again, I'm John Lummis. I'm the President and CEO of the Upstate SC Alliance. I've been in that role for 9 years. I'm from Anderson, grew up in Anderson, still live in Anderson. Previous to this job, I worked at Tri-County Tech for 8 years and worked with the county very closely. And previous to that, I was at Anderson County as the Economic Development Director for 4 years. The Upstate Alliance, we're the regional economic development group for the upstate 10 counties of South Carolina. We were formed in the year 2000, and we're a public-private partnership. And that's really important because if you see the map there, we have 10 counties that are members of our group, Pickens, of course, being one of those. And by the way, thanks to Pickens County Council for being a member of the Upstate Alliance. We also have 8 cities that are members of our group, and they're represented by their economic development directors. Our main constituency in what we do are the local economic developers, Ray Farley here in Pickens County, and then the other 9 in the county, and then those that are at the city level. I mean, we work, what our work is on a daily basis is to try to find new business and leads and prospects for them. Ray's a member of our local developers committee. We also have Emily DeRoberts, who is our past chair, Roy Costner, who is on our executive committee, and certainly appreciate their leadership. A couple of things I just wanted to mention about our upstate region. We have about 1.56 million people in population in this region. We really are a manufacturing region and have been since the 1880s with the textile industry, and now we have a very diversified manufacturing portfolio. About 2,100 manufacturers are located in the upstate of South Carolina. And our workforce closely tracks that. We have about 30% of our workforce that is either in manufacturing or support of manufacturing. We also have 540 international companies from our region, in our region from 34 countries, so very international, very export driven. And the region we're in between Atlanta and Charlotte is really an economic juggernaut. I mean, it is growing, our area is growing, and our role is to make sure that business continues to come and that our economy grows. Okay, so I like this slide, particularly for folks that are not as familiar with us. Again, the Upstate Alliance is one of 8 regional alliances throughout the state, and our focus is on awareness, which is we market our region to the world. We identify companies that we think match well with us, with our targets, and mostly in manufacturing is what we're recruiting. And then we get into the recruiting part. Our state and local economic development offices, our South Carolina Department of Commerce, we work very closely with on a daily basis. Ray and his team at Pickens County and our other economic development office, they're working on recruitment and negotiation on incentives. And then our Chamber of Commerce groups, they really work on the retention and in the community, making sure that our communities are ripe for business. So why regionalism? In economic development, literature, research, areas that have 1 million in population, that their economies are similar, and our similarity in the upstate is that we're a manufacturing region. They have a better chance of recruiting companies rather than individual counties or cities. Business clusters are regional. As you well know, the upstate of South Carolina is an automotive center. The southeastern U.S. is continuing to grow in automotive, and those business clusters really are regional. When you have BMW that comes in, when you have companies in Pickens County that come in automotive, that spurs other automotive companies to be in your region. Workforce does not know boundaries. City and county boundaries really don't matter when someone is looking for a job. As y'all well know, people that work in Pickens County, many of them live in Pickens County, but many live in Georgia, North Carolina, Anderson County, Spartanburg County, and they're coming into Pickens County. When we look at workforce travel patterns in the upstate of South Carolina, we say 45 miles, 45 minutes is really about a commute, and you really take in large sections of the counties with that. And then lastly, regionalism allows for public-private partnerships. We are set up as a public-private partnership. We have 200 private sector companies that support us along with our public sector partners. So what we really say is that the private sector drives economic development with public sector cooperation. But again, our local economic development partners are the ones that are our constituency that we're trying to get projects to. So the heart of our work is building relationships. This is what it's all about. You still can't beat a face-to-face meeting with someone if you're trying to convince them to move their business to the upstate of South Carolina. We work with a lot of site selectors, and I'm going to show you a picture in a minute of a group that visited Pickens County. These are individuals or companies that are representing companies that are looking to expand, and we find that our relationships that we have with those groups bring a lot of fruit. In the last year, right at half of our leads that we sent out in request for information came from site consultants. So what we're doing in meeting with these folks is really narrowing down the field. International trade offices, the German Consul General's office, we just had and spoke at an event several months ago. The United Kingdom, Switzerland, we have great representation with these offices because they know what companies are coming from overseas here, and if we know those folks, we can get connected with them. Industry leaders are key, so we keep up with trends. What's BMW doing? The EV battery situation, what are they going to do on needing new companies to come in? We're doing recruiting. And then, of course, building relationships with prospective companies across the world. So 2022 was a really good year. It was our largest year for recruitment in numbers of capital investment and jobs since 2014, about $3.9 billion across the upstate region, 6,476 jobs, 38 new companies, 30 existing companies, and 43% of those were international companies, so a total of 68 announcements. The state of South Carolina had 120 announcements, so a little bit over half were in the upstate region. So when we talk about requests for, I'll go to this first and I'll talk about that in a minute. We started working on our 5-year strategic plan in 2022. We had a plan that was lapsing at the end of that year. And one of the things that we look at are what are the trends worldwide that we're seeing that we're trying to focus in on as we're getting our plan for the next 5 years. As all of you know, I don't say that word anymore that starts with a C, but I will say post-pandemic. Post-pandemic communications have been fundamentally altered. The way people work is different. You have Zoom meetings, you have Teams meetings. You know, the way we do economic development is different because a lot of times now people would rather talk to you on a Zoom call than you going and visiting with them, which is sad in some ways, but true. Work from home has become a norm. And these type things are making communications differently when we work with companies. The second thing, Industry 4.0 is changing the nature of manufacturing and industrial services. Artificial intelligence, robotics, all the companies in Pickens County and through the upstate are beginning to use these, and we really need to focus on that if we're going to be able to recruit the industry of the future. Third trend, environmental, social, governance, diversity, equity, inclusion have been rising in prominence across the world. And we've really seen the biggest impact of that from companies interested in sustainability and clean energy. Those are the biggest questions we've had from companies thus far. But again, we just need to know that these forces are out there. Workforce and talent are critical site location factors. They continue to be that. Always is the number one question. Where am I going to get my workforce when when a company comes in and talks with us? If it's not their number one question, they're probably not a real company or a real prospect. Growth creates pressure throughout the region. I've heard a lot of discussion tonight about growth and different things. We really need to look at that because our area is growing and we need to look at infrastructure solutions moving forward. And lastly, change is a constant in global markets that influence decisions about global value chains. You've seen worldwide, you can't get construction materials, you can't get materials to use in manufacturing. The ports all over the country and the world were stopped up with boats out into their harbors. So that's changed the way we do business, and actually that has helped us because we're seeing a lot more companies looking for southeastern presences that have either been worldwide or were other parts of the United States. So, okay, our plan of work, really 5 pillars. You can get the next slide. Okay, that's okay. That we're looking at. What we're doing all the time, showcasing the upstate's value proposition to the world. How are we telling those stories about the great things that are going on in the upstate? How do we tell the story of the Pickens County Career Center and why it's one of the best career centers in the Southeast. How can we continue to tell these messages? Really getting into data-driven lead generation. There are so many opportunities now in ways for us to find companies, and really in economic development, the ways that we find companies haven't changed a lot over the last 50 years. We're really getting into the research on companies and finding those companies that are going to best match our region. Recruiting both companies and talent to the region. Again, we work on recruiting companies, but we're also working on recruiting talent. And we're doing that through the next one, promoting the upstate as a talent and career destination. If we're going to continue to grow our economy, we've got to have opportunities for people to have jobs. We have a initiative called Move Up and Skill Up. Move Up is a talent attraction initiative that combines a search engine for jobs through Indeed with job availabilities. And we have been putting that out on social media. Also, we have something called Skill Up that works with people within our region. So we have a jobs board. If you see that there's a welding job in Pickens County, it doesn't only just have that job, it will take someone to the Tri-County Tech website and tell them what training is needed for them to get that job, and then the funding opportunities for that training. And hopefully that person will go get trained, 6-month course, and then get a job as a welder. And then lastly, championing economic development in a business-friendly environment. South Carolina is one of the most business-friendly states in the union, and we want to continue to be that. We have the lowest unionization rate of any state in the country, and we need to continue to have policies that show that we are a business-friendly state, and that's how we do a lot in supporting our local development offices. Okay. So I was talking about site consultants. You can see Ray and I are the goalposts on this picture, but we had a group of 6 site consultants that came to the upstate. We showed them all around, showed them businesses, talked to our local economic developers, and we went to TaylorMade and toured. So these were 6 national site consultants that learned about Pickens County and the upstate and how we can make the best golf balls in the world right down the street. We also went to the Pickens Career Center. I couldn't find a picture from that, unfortunately, but we did tour the Career Center, and they were amazed and very excited about what they saw. Okay, so how do we support Pickens County? We did 13 individual research requests for Ray and his office in 2021 and 2022. Those aren't including the request for information where we helped him get information together to send out to different companies. We also sent out region-wide 80 requests for information this year to our counties and cities. And when I've been here in the past, we've talked about the importance of that relationship with the South Carolina Department of Commerce through the regions. 55 of those 80 were projects that came from the South Carolina Department of Commerce. So that was double, the 80 number was double what we did in 2021. So we send all of those leads to Ray and his team to compete against the other 10 counties in the region and the cities as well. Another thing that we did that I didn't have on the slide is Ray had a prospect visit that he needed to make that we were able to fund for him. We give each of our local economic development offices $5,000, what we call a scholarship per year, that they can travel either on our behalf or for a project. So we did do that in the end of this past year. And I can't talk about specific companies, but there are 2 leads that we had identified that are actively looking at Pickens County, and that's all that I can say right now. So we do work very hard to help Pickens County. And then in regard to advocacy, we work a lot with our state legislature on economic development policies that help make South Carolina more competitive. One thing that we did do to help this year, the governmental affairs person from AT&T called me and said, hey, do you know of anybody in your 10 counties that needs some help with some infrastructure for an industrial park? I put him in touch with Ray, and the county got $125,000 from AT&T. So You've asked me in the past how I'm helping the county, so I think that was a good help there. Okay, I'm almost finished. Okay, I know y'all are happy about that. So, keys to 2023, workforce development and talent continues to be the key to what we're doing. Again, Pickens County, the school district, the Career Center does a fantastic job. I'm just gonna tell y'all, it's a model, working with Tri-County Tech and others. But focusing on building talent from within and bringing people from outside is gonna be key for our counties to continue to grow. I want to talk a little bit about sites and buildings. I know that the county has been talking about this issue, but again, I talked about that we had 80 RFIs that we sent out this year. And in between 2018 and 2022, we had 102 site requests, which are different from RFIs. 56% of those, 56 of those wanted a building. 46 of those wanted a site. So having a spec building is key when these people are looking at your county and being ready for them. The building sizes that we've seen, I'll just go over 2022. The most popular size was 100,000 to 125,000. Second most popular size that people were looking for was 0 to 25,000. So, and then next were those from 25,000 to 50,000. So having a spec building, really a 100,000 square foot spec building, you're in the sweet spot when companies are looking at your area. And then on acreage, in 2022, the vast majority were looking at acreage size between 11 acres and 50 acres. So if you get a park in place, you're going to be able to get people looking at your sites and buildings if you have those in place. And then lastly, requests in regard to ceiling height, 29 feet to 32 feet was the most popular request. So get your 100,000 square foot building with 29 to 32 and have some 11 to 50 acre sites in your business. Okay, lastly, infrastructure development. I talked a little bit about that before, but that is just going to be key for us to continue to be successful. You know, water, sewer, road systems, and then access to your industrial parks and your buildings is going to be key with what we're doing moving forward. Okay, I probably took too much time, and I'm glad to take questions.
Any questions on the presentation? Thank you so very much for your time, and I appreciate, go ahead, Vice Chairman.
I just wanted to turn my mic back on. Mr. Roberts from Duke Energy, thank you very much for being here. Mr. Lomas, thank you for coming to explain, and it's different, this presentation is different than we've had in the past, because you're saying you invested, we know what we invested, and we are seeing now what the results are off of getting a return on our investment, and that was very important to us, so thank you for bringing that.
That was the point I was about to make, is it definitely sounds like you learned from the previous times, the questions we asked, so you just came prepared, so you did a great job
I'm
with that.
not too old to learn.
So you did a great job, and thank you for your service, Mr. Roberts, to this organization and all the other organizations that you've been a part of, and the relationship that we've had, and we got you for another month, right?
And then we need the phone number on the boat, where you're going to be. I don't know where it is.
I do want to thank the council for your continued support, and I'm going to tell you, there's no county that I work harder for than Pickens County of our 10, so I'm just going to tell you that. Y'all are on my mind a lot, and thank you, Roy, for your service on our executive committee, and as well to Emily. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Up next on tonight's agenda is B, update on county administration roof and potential solutions. Mr. Roper.
So you may have noticed, Chairman, members of council, the buckets that we have, they appear to be purchased from Ace Hardware, which is branded on the side of Ace, mainly on the inside portions of the building. Just for those of you that may not recall, 7 or 8 years ago, council decided to allocate money to fix the roof on the inspection building. This building, which is a great building to this day, serves the
75 or 80 years. But the roof is not holding up at that rate. So we don't want to go back and just do what we did before, which is put it out to bid, get a roofer here, have a roofer come up with a solution on site, and install that solution. Instead, seeing the track record we have, we need to have this engineered. We need to have an engineering firm come and look at this, tell us what the problem is, tell us what the solutions are, something we can bring back to you all. So in order to do that, an engineering firm was asking to do some work, some goodwill work for us, and I had him get on the roof here a couple of weeks ago and come back with a cost estimate, which we'll have to handle this through our procurement, but just to give a ballpark figure, to have an engineer actually come back with an opinion on the proper way to fix this roof and do it right, they tell us will be $20,000. So they ask for tonight, members of council, is that we go ahead and allocate that money from fund balance. So this won't come out of an existing account, existing department. This will be $20,000 from fund balance so that we can have an engineer look at the roof, give us recommendations, something we can act on and rely upon.
Vice Chairman.
Mr. Roper, so how long ago did we buy this roof?
It was basically the conversation started, I think, 8 years ago, but it was 7 years ago when it was installed.
So in 7 years, our roof has failed.
Yes. Actually, less than that. In 6 years, we've been patching and doing what we could to keep it going in the meantime.
So the person or the company who installed the roof, was there any life expectancy beyond 7?
Yes, there was a 20-year warranty on the roof.
Okay, so are we exploring getting our money back from this roofer? Because I would rather do that than take money out of the general fund.
Well, not only that, but not only exploring it against the roofer, because we've had the roofer back multiple times on service calls trying to get them to make it right. We've also, he continued to blame the company that made the materials. So we've had the company that made the roofing material come out and give us an assessment as well. But the way that would shake out, and I would point you to your county attorney for this more specifically, is they're not going to just give us money, and we can't wait for the judicial process to play it out for us to get this engineering work done. What we would need to do is expend the money and then sue them for that money if it was the appropriate thing to do.
Then I would make a motion to allocate the funding and sue them to get it back.
So I have a motion on the table to allocate the $20,000 and then start legal proceedings for a suit.
You said it a lot nicer than I did, but yes.
Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Second by Dr. Wilson. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That is unanimous.
Thank you, council members.
Item C is consideration of technology transparency upgrades in the admin building and source of funds. That'd be you, Mr. Roper.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, members of council. One of the things that I've heard from many of you and from many members of the public is frustration with some of the technology in this building. As we've looked at potential solutions on that, another issue has presented itself. 2 months ago, I don't know if you recall, but someone came and vandalized in the courtyard and busted the glass out right here in the lobby area. We actually had a camera that points in that direction, but the camera was not of sufficient quality or technology to actually be able to learn anything, and so we don't know who did that, and we had to just replace it. Since then, we've had 3 county vehicles parked on that side of the building that had their catalytic converters taken while they sat on county property. So we also have a camera aimed out in that direction, and it was unable to provide sufficient clarity to give us any leads on that. Pickens City and Pickens County Sheriff's Office both responded here in the last couple of weeks to try to help us investigate that. So we know we have technology deficiencies. We know that those technology deficiencies are creating transparency issues. For example, Mr. Chairman, just 2 weeks ago, you were very pointed in your comments to me that why can we not broadcast what's going on in main conference room? Why can we not do that for the public? Well, it's a limitation in the technology we have. Why can we not broadcast on these televisions that are outside in the lobby for overflow crowds? It's limitations on the technology we have built in. Why are we not able to live stream from different locations? We can only live stream from this building. Limitations on technology. So several weeks back, I asked Robert Furr, our Director of Information Technology, to come back with a plan on how we could upgrade both our security camera system, and also our delivery of information to the public. And the good news here, this is all bad news, the good news here is that through our membership in NACO, the National Association of Counties, we were alerted of the availability of grant funds for the delivery of government service, and that availability of grant funds is from the bipartisan infrastructure law. Pickens County had been allocated, based on our size, $50,000 last year and $50,000 this year, which will more than cover these technological and security upgrades. But for NACO notifying us, there was no one from the federal government was going to call us and tell us this. There was no data that we had received. So to the point of the last presentation where you make that investment, we think this is a good example of how the National Association of Counties really does serve us. So what I'm asking for tonight is for your permission to move forward with that grant funding that is foursquare with these two issues, for us to go ahead and allocate that money and fix those two problems.
So I'll make the motion that we accept those grants or whatever those grants, and then allocate that money for these two issues as stated.
Second.
Discussion on that. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That is unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of council.
Thank you for the opportunity to find grant funding there and looking outside the box. That saves taxpayer dollars here locally. Item 12 on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda, where we have no matters. So item 13 will be executive session for boards and commissions for ACOG and the Beautification Committee, and then proposed contractual matters, Project Charlie Echo, the administrator's contract, and a legal briefing on the Ariel Mill / Bailey bill. Do I have a motion that we go into executive session for these items?
Motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And we'll return after our executive session. Thank you all.
I wasn't able to be here for the last month, like, whenever you joined and everything, but I know we talked prior. Good, yeah. Yes, as far as that issue is concerned, yeah. We're the one that reported this other issue where they were dumping this trash on the side of the road. Wasn't, my mom and dad's, their cameras at their house just called.
That there's no beer drinking.
That's not in your.
At the big
It's the same guys was saying we made an ordinance and didn't do it 3 readings. And didn't hear anything was said. So.
So anyways, I just wanted to introduce myself because I know we talked on the phone before you ran.
I think you did tell me about it. Yep.
Thank you.
Keep up the good stuff. Lots of good stuff going on.
But this is just a little 2-page explanation with the law in Columbia, in Charleston, and then the actual ordinance is about 3 to 4 pages. There's enough for everybody.
No problem.
Thanks, man.
Goodbye. Take care.
Mr. Erlandson, it's good to see you.
letter.
Let's see. The reason I go to church is because I work. Don't worry, come out to die today. If you see me in church, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, big man? Hey, buddy. How are you? Living a good life. Yeah? Eating all the chocolate.
Are we going to Vegas or not? Not March. Right, Jack?
I am.
Yeah, I'm Wes Henry. Oh, hey, Mike, I didn't recognize you.